Hi guys, welcome to another episode, and this time I'm here with the legend Steve Maxwell, and I actually came across Steve's name when I started training with kettlebells for the first time, and I got that from Tim Ferriss, and now I found out that he was a student of yours as well.
And my old gym exercise in Philadelphia. It was quite a few years ago.
And is it true that you're the first man ever to teach kettlebell in the United States?
As a group kettlebell, yes. Pavel Setsolin is credited with introducing the Russian version of kettlebell training to the U.S., but I was the first person to really seize on it and actually do large group classes because I saw it as just a really good group activity for group fitness classes. Up to that point, it was step aerobics, aerobic dance exercise. Yoga was sort of in at its peak, but most men don't like group exercise classes.
Right.
Us guys are kind of loners, individual guys. But I saw the kettlebell was something that would really turn the guys on, and it worked. I still had a lot of women in the class, but the guys really went for the kettlebell.
To get the timing right, when was that? What year was that when you started that?
Wow, that was about 1998, 99.
Wow, and what exactly excited you about the kettlebell? Why is it a good exercise for?
Well, it's really interesting because I had always known about kettlebells. I had always seen pictures. I was a collector of old-time strength books and pamphlets. I had always saw the weights with the big round handle. They were referred to as ring weights. I don't know whether you know it or not, but it's you Germans that invented the kettlebell.
No, I didn't know that. I thought the Russians.
No, not at all. The Russians took it from the Germans.
Okay.
The Germans actually invented physical culture, and most of the physical culture in the U.S. came from the German people. It was really interesting. The Germans invented the modern day military obstacle courses. So all these obstacle course races had its start in Germany back in the late 1800s. So it was a real seat of physical culture. And I read an article by Pavel in Milo magazine, and it just sounded really cool. He was describing this exercise system using this ball with a handle. So I had no clue on what a modern kettlebell looked like. I knew what the old-time kettlebells looked like. So one of my jiu-jitsu students, I had a jiu-jitsu school, also the first BJJ school on the Eastern Seaboard. He fashioned me one. He worked at a metal shop, and I had no clue on really how to use it. So he calls me up and says, "Hey, Steve, I have these two kettlebells I made out of stainless steel." How about that, stainless steel? And they're in the truck. So I ran down like a kid at Christmas morning to get my new toys, and they're in the back of the pickup truck in this parking lot, and I pull it out, and I do what I thought was a snatch, and of course I didn't have the technique, and he goes, bang, on my forearm, And I say, wow, man, those Russians are really tough. I'm like, ah. Of course, then later, I learned the techniques. I actually got with Pavel, and we created the RKC. We had dinner at the Arnold Schwarzenegger trade show in Ohio, the biggest fitness show in the world. And we sat down one night, me, Pavel, and John New Kane, and came up with this concept of the RKC. And I was there for the first one, and just about every one right up through, I think, to about 2004 or 5.
Just for the listeners, what is the RKC?
It was the Russian Kettlebell Challenge, or the Russian Kettlebell Certification. It was the first certifying body to teach this form of exercise.
Wow, yeah. And then you had which in our scene is a very known name, Tim Ferriss, come in for classes before.
For sure.
He was even probably writing his first book that was right about then. And did you stay in touch with him, by the way?
No. He was there in Philadelphia for a brief while, and then just basically lost touch.
Ah, okay.
And then I saw later that he did this book. What was it? The 4-hour work week or whatever?
Body.
Yeah, 4-hour body or whatever.
Yeah, and since you also you have a wrestling background, and a grappling background.
I do. All my training first of all, I've been training for more than half a century.
More than half a century?
For 53 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I started when I was young. I'll be 64 this year. And I started when I was like 10.
That's what we need to get more secrets from you now.
And I was living in a little town called Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And you know, it's really interesting because a lot of people from Germany had settled there because it looks very much like Germany. If you would go there in that area of Pennsylvania, you would think you were in Germany. That's why it was so popular with the Amish, which were like a religious group,
Right. Yeah.
and so forth, because it was very similar to their home.
Mm-hmm.
Very green and pastoral, rolling hills, you know, beautiful little rivers like these are out here, and that type of thing. But yeah, I was not a particularly gifted athlete, and I wasn't very good at sport, to tell you the truth. I was small.
Hard to believe.
And I didn't, I wasn't unsuccessful playing American gridiron football. I was too short for basketball. I didn't have good hand-eye coordination. Baseball was terrible. Soccer never existed. Gymnastics was only in its infancy. They would have clubs, but it wasn't part. All the sports are part of the educational system. So it was mostly football, basketball, track, and baseball. But when I went out for wrestling, I had instant success. I was made for that particular sport. And so all my training was geared towards making me a better athlete. I never got into bodybuilding or building muscle for muscle's sake. I didn't get into weightlifting as a way of demonstrating strength. I didn't want to be a strength specialist because it takes away from the sport. But I did use these modalities, you know, the barbells, the dumbbells, and body weight training to make myself better for my chosen sport, which was wrestling. And I wrestled all through junior high, high school, later a Division I NCAA program. Wrestled 4 years at Westchester. Was very successful, MAC champ, 18-2-1 record my senior year. And but after university, what do you do with wrestling? You know, it's hard. Usually most wrestling, I try to go to some of the universities to keep up with it, but they're in the middle of the afternoon, the practices. And I was a working man at that point. You know, I had a business and a career. And so what do you do? So I just kind of dropped off and tried some other martial arts, kickboxing, Muay Thai, karate, Kung Fu. Didn't particularly like those martial arts. And then I found the Gracie brothers right about 1989. It was like, this is what I've been looking for.
That's Gracie, which is...
The Gracie family basically...
Unbeaten.
Yeah, they're credited with creating Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and any followers of mixed martial arts, they realize that Jiu-Jitsu is one of the 3 disciplines you need for MMA. You need your kickboxing, and you need your wrestling, standing up, and then on the ground, you definitely need to have some Jiu-Jitsu. And I just fell in love with that particular martial art. Earned my black belt in the year 2000 in Hawaii from the second son of Elliot Gracie, and now I'm a 5th degree black belt. I've been a black belt since 2000, so.
Wow.
I still teach a lot of self-defense and a lot of BJJ classes around.
Yeah, I actually just yesterday recorded with Stuart McGill, and I asked him about, he's a back therapist.
Yeah, no, I know his work.
Again, in case the listeners also don't know it.
Please point the mic to you when you're speaking.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
So, and I asked him about what sport you should choose based on your particular individual body type. And because I was actually doing that mistake that I was doing yoga and at the same time strong lifting at some point. And he said that's the worst thing you can do for your back because you relax your back and then you put a lot of weight on it. What is your take on body type in sport? Do you see any particular body type being predisposed for let's say MMA and Jiu-Jitsu now?
No, it seems like every body type seems to be successful. One of the winningest guys ever is a fellow by the name of Roger Gracie, who lives in London. He's built just like you. Tall, lanky, rangy, not big muscles at all, just very supple, nice physique, but, not a muscle guy. And he just kills these muscle guys with just technique and the leverage that he has. And then I've seen little short, stocky guys do extremely well also. Everyone develops a fighting style around their own body type. But there is a misconception out there that somehow if you do a particular activity, you're going to look like that particular type of athletic. I'll give an example. Women, say, oh, I want to have a dancer's body, so I think I'm going to do dancercise so I can look like a dancer. Mm-hmm. But if the woman doesn't have the right proportions to be a dancer, the short torso, the extremely long legs, it doesn't matter how much dance she's going to do. The mistake is the body is successful at the activity. The activity does not create the body. Another example is gymnasts have terrific physiques. They look amazing. They even rival bodybuilders sometimes, right? So everybody is doing the in the hood workouts in the playgrounds, trying to do all these tricks, the flags, the planches, all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, they're hurting themselves. They're destroying their shoulders and their elbows, trying to do all these feats because their body isn't built to do that type of thing. Mm-hmm. For every YouTube hero, there's 10,000 guys that crashed and burned and hurt themselves and whatever. So just because a gymnast has a great physique does not mean that gymnastics is a good way to build that physique. The guy that already had the type of body that would do well, the perfect bone length ratios, the muscle insertion points, the proper nervous system, the right fast twitch muscle fibers, they're successful in gymnastics. They're successful at the activity. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't follow that if you're a tall, rangy guy with a lot of slow twitch muscle fiber, that's a very good activity for you. It's just an exercise in frustration. So the activity doesn't build the physique. The body type is successful in the activity. So trying to emulate your hero isn't necessarily the best way to go.
So how do you go about evaluating someone when you work with a new athlete? What's your process of identifying what they need to work on?
First of all, it's really important people have realistic expectations. There's only a very small percentage that are ever going to be like a high-level athlete. It's just a given. Most people are going to be somewhere in the middle, like average. And most, you know what average looks like, pretty much. You see it all the time. That means that the other half of average is even worse. So you have some people, what should we call low responders, that have virtually no ability to respond to exercise at all. Virtually nothing. They're not going to gain muscle or strength. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't try, because they can still be stronger than what they'd be if they didn't, and still be healthier than they would be if they did it. And then you have this little tiny group in the end that they just go in the gym and breathe the air and they get bigger and stronger. These Olympic level guys that play in, NBA, NFL, they're the elite of the elite. But that's such a small little segment of the population. Mm-hmm. So it's important that people have a realistic expectation. Most people are average. Most people are never going to have big G-whiz muscles. They're never going to be lifting really, really heavy weight. And you got to be okay with that. But many people, they try and they get frustrated, or even worse, they get hurt. Mm-hmm. In my training philosophy, if you're getting injured in your supplementary strength training, you're training 100% wrong. If you need to do 15 minutes of foam rolling just to work out, you're doing something wrong. Sports, that's a different story. You expect to get hurt in sports. No one ever said that competitive athletics is healthy. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, competition is probably unhealthy. You probably shorten your lifespan, and for sure you're going to get injured at some point. It's just the nature of the game. Does that mean you shouldn't do it? No. You should just go in with open eyes and just understand the ramifications, the risk to benefit ratio. But for your supplementary training, it should make you injury resistant. It should make your body and your joints tougher, make it harder to get injured. And if you're just lifting for health and longevity, you should never be getting injured, getting hurt. It means that you need to completely reevaluate what you're doing. But as far as actually helping people set goals, you do have to look at the structure. I do a lot of online personal training, so people send me pictures. I can analyze the structure. I look at them in a bathing suit, front, side, back. It's very important to see their feet and their knees. Mm-hmm. I do have my own, you've heard of this movement screening? Mm-hmm. I have a Maxwell movement screen, which is actually quite simple, that I teach in my certifications. I'll do a movement screen if I can. But I can just tell a lot just from structurally analyzing a person's photograph. And then I have a fitness assessment that I'll send. Mm-hmm. Very important is breathing. I do like this body.
I want to dig into breathing.
Body oxygen level test, you know, just to see.
But before, do you use technology to screen as well? For example, also, have you ever used genetic testing, by the way?
Nah, nothing that in depth. I have my feelings about genetics. I'm going to give an interesting story.
Oh yeah, cool.
My father, he had 8 brothers and sisters. He had 4 sisters and 4 brothers. And every one of them died before they reached their 70th birthday. Stroke and heart disease seemed to run rampant in his family. Alzheimer's as well. And his father died when he was only 53. His mother died, I think she was like 70 or 71. Dismal genetics, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
And this was on both sides of the family. Although he did have one uncle that lived quite old. My father's now 93. My father never overate. He ate small meals, never snacked, never ate in between meals. Always ate light, didn't follow any particular diet, just would eat light, and always kept his weight down. He ran. He loved running, and he lifted weights. But he was the only member of his family to train. So, what does that tell you about genetics? You don't have to be a slave to your genetics. You know?
Yeah.
Even if the tests show maybe you've been dealt a bad hand, you can still overcome the expression of these negative genes just through healthy living and healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, I totally believe that, and also the concept of epigenetics, you know, just the genes evolve over a lifetime as well. And now that we're with technology even capable of changing genes with this new CRISPR technology that just came out, it was just in the newspaper in Germany. So there's, I think what, as far as genetics are concerned, there's a lot coming, but we're not right there yet.
Still a few years away, a few decades away, perhaps.
Yeah, that's right.
So does that mean if I live long enough, maybe
Oh,
I'll be able to live forever?
well, there are people in our scene, you know, in the biohacking scene, the life extenders, they aim to live 500 years now. And they're, so I think you have a good chance if they're right.
Well, there's legends about ancient Chinese, Lao Tzu, and there was in the Bible, Methuselah. They talk, you know, of different people that seem to live several centuries. So perhaps it is possible.
Yeah, and you know, one thing that I think yogis also use is, and that's what I want to now know about from you, because we talked about that before the recording, is breathing. And you asked me about my warrior breathing technique, which I did at my presentation, and it instantly told me this is not the right way to breathe. And you know from like the best of the best. And can you?
I've been studying the breathing situation for a while, and the whole concept is staying out of the upper lobes of the lungs and staying in the lower lobes. These are the calming receptors. This is the panic receptor. As soon as you go to the upper chest, you put yourself in a panic state, fight or flight. You know. So you want to stay in a calm state as much as you can, even when training. Very important to breathe in and out through the nose. During extremely strenuous exercise, it's okay to vent through the mouth, but you want to, most of the time, 90% of the time, in and out of the nose. And you actually become more oxygenated when you take little sips of air as opposed to big breaths. I've actually proven this. I have a oxygen oximeter. You know what this is? Mm-hmm. It's a little thing you can put in your finger. It tells you what your oxygen level is. Mm-hmm. And I've done, you know, like mouth breathing, upper chest breathing, fast breathing, real slow breathing, sips of air. And you can see on the oximeter how it affects your body oxygen levels. And you're far more oxygenated when you take small, little shallow breaths into the diaphragm as opposed to going into the upper chest. You instantly drop your O2 levels and you build up your CO2 like a little bit too much. So better to keep your breathing calm as possible. Very important not to involuntarily hold the breath. You hear people when they train, and it gets this trend, you hear like, one of the most harmful things you can do. You literally shave years off the end of your life doing that type of involuntary, what they call Valsalva sync. You've got to keep the breathing calm. Even if you're in extremely strenuous situation where you build up oxygen debt, you learn to breathe a little bit faster and pay off the oxygen debt. So let's say I'm doing something extremely strenuous. I use a technique called burst breathing.
Right. Yeah. Yogis do that too sometimes.
So you could also do it through just the nose. And it's like a little pump. So you pay off the oxygen debt.
How long do you do that?
Just enough to pay off the oxygen debt as fast as I can. Maybe I'm doing something like a really hard exercise, or, sprinting, or, I still get in the mat with the jiu-jitsu. Maybe I'm wrestling with a guy and I start to build up an oxygen debt, so you can pay it off without...
Let's actually talk about your routines a little bit, because I know you're a nomad. By the way, where do you call home? And if anywhere, then how long do you stay there throughout the year?
Well, right now, today, right here at the hotel.
Okay.
It's home for about the next 2 hours. And then it'll be Munich airport. But I gave up a home about 2004. And I actually moved in a camper van for a short while. German-made vehicle, by the way. Fantastic, okay. Yeah. Wow. It was a Mercedes work van that had been converted by Westphalia. Mm-hmm. It was the coolest thing ever. I always had this fantasy about living in like a little RV. You guys use that term in Germany? RV?
Well, I know about it with Wohnmobil, yeah, but it's the same thing.
Like a camper van.
Right.
Yeah. And I lived in that for almost 3 years. Drove coast to coast in the U.S. 8 times. And after a while, I started getting so many calls for seminars. What do you do with the vehicle? What do you do with it when you're traveling for 6 months at a time? So I sold it. Speaking of the power of the internet, I sold it sight unseen on Craigslist while I was in Cologne, Germany. Guy wired me the money. I mailed him the keys and the title. So,
okay, wow.
Yeah, amazing, the power of the internet. But I just travel. I live out of one bag. So I went from a 4-story house, owned a jiu-jitsu school, owned a gym in Center City, Philly, got divorced, sold the gym, gave the jiu-jitsu school away, moved into a little house, moved from this house into a camper van, moved from camper van to a backpack, basically. And I've went through several evolutions. When I first started on the road, I carried way too much stuff. I had this big 65-liter duffel bag, a roller, and it only took one trip to Germany and then to London. I dumped it, man. I said, I'm carrying way too much stuff. Got a smaller bag. Still too much stuff. Got a smaller bag, yeah. Now I have a 45-liter bag. Everything I own in this world is in that bag, pretty much. And I have about 3.5 seasons of clothes. I say half season, because if it gets much under 0 degrees, I might be a little chilly. Mm. I mean, I could go up to, I was in Beijing this year, and Beijing it was like -7 degrees. I could stand it as long as I wasn't outside too long, but I was a little cold. My feet got a little bit cold because boots, you can't travel with boots. So anything down to 0, I'm fine. But once it goes below 0, it gets a little tough. And I had that all in one 45-liter bag. And I just go from hotel to hotel. I used to do Airbnbs, but I don't like living in someone's home. That's what it feels like, someone else's space. A hotel is neutral.
Right.
So.
How did it feel when you first let go of all your possessions and what you've built for yourself?
It was a little bit hard at first, but it kind of felt like a relief, like a weight off my back. To tell the truth, the hardest thing for me was my book collection. I used to really like my books. That was the toughest thing to let go. But when I finally just realized that it's just, everything I need is in here and in here. And now I'm finding a lot of those same books, PDFs online. Kindle has so many books in print now. But some of these were like real collector's items, like physical culture, wrestling, weightlifting. Some were like from the 1800s, like original copies. I mean, it's sitting in my ex-wife's garage. I should just donate it to some library or something, because some of those books are really hard to find. Right. But that was the hard thing. But everything else is pretty easy. Everything else is just material stuff. You can always get new clothes or new stuff, As long as I have my passport and
So how is it for you now, because you switch locations so much? Do you have a certain routine that you follow? And maybe a follow-up question, how do the first 90 minutes of a normal day for Steve Maxwell look like?
Well, I try to get a flow. So one country goes to the next country, that goes to the next country, you know? Like this year, started in Greece, a little island called Icaria. And then we went from that island to Croatia, which was pretty easy hop. And then from Croatia, we went to Sardinia, which was pretty close. And then to Munich. Now we're going to Amsterdam, but then Amsterdam to New York City. But then we're going to Cleveland, Ohio. And then we're to LA, where I'm doing another podcast. And then from LA to back to the coast in Canada, I'm going to St. Edward's Island. And then to Iceland. You see how that's like a short hop? And then back to the UK. Wow. And then the UK, I think I'm back here in Germany again. So you see how it all flows?
It's all engineered, sort of.
All engineered. Then to Bahrain, doing I'm doing a breathing seminar. In fact, why don't you come as my guest to Bahrain?
I'd love that, sir.
Yeah, man. I'm doing like a whole day of breath.
When is that exactly?
I'll have to look at my website, but maybe Eileen can look on the iPhone and see when that is. But if you go to my events page on maxwellsc.com.
Right.
But as far as my day, I tried to, your routine is your home, basically, you know? What makes me feel at home? The second I hit a hotel, boom, I open up the bag. It's a ritual. Do you know what a neti pot is?
No.
A neti pot is like an Ayurvedic tool where you rinse your sinuses.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, so I take my neti pot, my shaving, my little toiletry kit, put all that in the bathroom. I use a natural bristle brush, you know, I hang that up. I lay out my stuff in a particular way. And usually if the hotel has a bathrobe and slippers, you see, then I'm at home instantly. Get on the Wi-Fi. In the morning, I'll wake up usually about 5 o'clock, and I'll go through like a whole ritual of like eye exercises and self-massage, brushing the skin, nasal irrigation. I do oil pulling. We talked about you swish oil for 20 minutes. Fantastic for teeth and gums. Do a little breathing, some qigong exercises. Then I go online for a little bit. I usually like to drink matcha, green tea. And then usually about 7 o'clock, 2 hours after I get up, I go out. And it depends on, I do different trainings on different days. I usually strength train twice a week. I find that gives me enough recovery. Other days I'll do this.
Do you use weights or body weight?
Since I'm traveling, body weight. And I also use rubber band. I have a rubber band for different exercises. Other days I'll do crawling and mixed in with some running. Other days it may just be running with the Russian Slavic health system mixed in with Qigong. I have my own little creation of mixed and matched from different disciplines. And then if I get a chance, I'll get on the mat later in the afternoon, depending where I'm at. If I'm at a place where I'm teaching jiu-jitsu, I'll go and I'll train a little bit. When I'm in Australia or Maui, I go there quite a bit. I get on the mat quite a bit, actually. But that's usually later in the day. But the morning is always the same. It's all walking, slow jogging with breath work, mobility mixed in sometimes with crawling.
Do you meditate as well?
I do. I like to use this app on my phone, Kelly Howe. I use the Theta, the Universal Mind Meditation too.
You put that in the show notes, by the way.
Yeah, it's a Theta brainwave meditation. It's music with the sound of the ocean, and there's a Theta beat, and it slows your brain down. So you can meditate like a monk your first time, man.
Wow.
And she has this beautiful angelic voice where she's just basically repeating these really nice affirmations. And even if you fall asleep, it just goes right into your subconscious mind. Universal mind meditation too. But of course, every morning, right as I wake up, you're still kind of in this natural theta state. I always will make meditations each morning and practice gratitude.
That's
like
also another
gratitude topic. Session.
And well, the meditation, it sounds like transcendental meditation, right? This is because I think often people confuse this traditional transcendental meditation with mindfulness. Do you also practice mindfulness? And I think gratitude is maybe a way for mindfulness. Do you differentiate between these two?
Well, I always try to be mindful, especially with my thoughts, because thoughts are things, and your thoughts are what create your reality. And your reality is the sum total of all your positive and negative thoughts. So if you're a negative thinking person, you probably are not having that good of a time in this life. And if you're coming forth with a lot of positive thoughts, you're going to have a much better time of it. But you can change whatever that reality is just by changing your mind and changing your thinking. So I'm very aware of my thoughts as they're going through my mind. And I'm very aware of the fact that not all thoughts come from yourself. They can come from the collective mindset. And you can even be affected mood-wise by the collective. For example, when Germany lost in the Euro, I could feel the collective energy, whoa, and people were really kind of down. I could feel that. And different places will have a different collective vibration. You can feel it when you get off the plane. When I go to Hawaii, it's like, the aloha spirit. When I go to Moscow, it's kind of, people are kind of depressed and down there. But you can feel it in different spots of the world. Right. Usually Germany is a pretty upbeat place, man. Usually I feel really good, man, when I come to Germany. But other places, not so much. Mexico, that's another place that's kind of down. It's collective, Yeah. A lot of it has to do with poverty mindset, lack of limitation. So yes, I practice mindfulness. As far as meditation, I don't sit in a cross-legged lotus or anything. But many times when I run, I use a form of running called Zen running, where I'm just 100% focused on my breath and my form, my footfall, my mechanics, the breath, totally out of my conscious mind. I'm not thinking thoughts. I'm just totally focused on one thing. It's a real Zen. Almost like you're just kind of floating through space when you're running. I'm not striving for speed. I'm not worried about my heart rate. I don't measure distance. I usually will measure time just as a practical matter. Usually between 20 and 30 minutes. I might glance at the watch just to see how long I've been running. But if I'm tired, I run slow. If I'm energetic, I might run fast. Maybe I'll only run 10 minutes some days. Maybe I'll go 40 minutes other days. But there's no striving, there's no competition, no stress. It's just all a moving meditation. It's very relaxing. And when I'm done, I always feel better than when I started, and I always feel energized. I don't feel enervated or exhausted or tired. I feel quite good. So for me, it's a moving meditation. And I do that with my walking as well sometimes.
And yeah, I think I just wanted to get back to that point where you said your reality is the collection of your positive and negative thoughts, and I think that's an excellent way to express it. And you mentioned gratitude, because I also believe in gratitude. And when you ask someone what you're grateful for, then they automatically start thinking about positive things in their lives. How do you practice gratitude?
Well, it was an element that was missing for a while, because I understood the manifestation process. And I understood the positive versus negative thinking aspect. But I still wasn't really getting the results that I wanted sometimes. And I wasn't getting the abundance that I was seeking. So I realized that oftentimes I was dwelling and concentrating too much on what I didn't have. I was seeing the lack in concentrating on that. It's like a health ailment. Your belly hurts. And you start concentrating on how much your belly hurts, right? Mm-hmm. But you're just going to manifest the same thing because you're concentrating on a negative. Instead of concentrating on what it is that you want, you got to take your mind away from what you don't want. So you start thinking of all the things in your life that are good, the goodness in everything. And even a seeming disaster could be a blessing in disguise. Even something that seems extremely negative, you find 10 reasons why you're grateful for that particular event. And now you're all of a sudden putting your mind 100% on what it is you want and what it is you like. And by directing your energies towards that, you will generate more of same. So one way I practice gratitude, I get a notice on my iPhone or iPad for every sale I make. Every single sale. Sometimes it's hundreds. And I will look at each and every one, and I will give thanks.
Wow.
But it's not. It's important not just to give thanks, but important to also say why you are grateful. Not enough to say I'm grateful, and it's not important. It's also important to generate a real, true feeling of gratitude. It's the feeling nature that creates the law of attraction. It's your feeling. So I'll really generate feelings of gratitude. You know, I'm so grateful for this money because it allows me to be rich and free as it's meant to be. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful for this money because it allows me to have this delicious breakfast at this buffet in a hotel. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful for this money that has come in because I can buy whatever I want on Amazon Prime. Thank you, thank you. You see, I give a reason for it. And I do the same thing, not just for money, but you know, for everything. Mm-hmm. But I really get on this kick if I start getting influenced with negative thinking. You know, I'm human. I get angry. I let negative feelings consume me sometimes. It usually happens when you're tired, by the way. I call it falling down into the bardo, you know, kind of like a lower level consciousness. It happens, you know. It's usually because you get tired. When you allow yourself to get tired, enervated, exhausting, as you know, when you do presentations, it can be very tiring because you're basically giving your life force to the camera and to the audience and to the people. I'm literally taking my etheric energy and giving it to each person and making that connection. And I always have like a little ritual at the end, you know, where I like to touch each person that came in. I just give them a little high five, a little fist bump.
Okay.
Every single person, just to show my gratitude and just to connect. Even the huge crowd I had the other day. But it's just my way of connecting with each person as a thing of gratitude. But that does take your energy.
Yes.
So your batteries go down. So I have to take time out to recharge.
I'm a huge follower of or pursuer of the flow state, and the company I founded is called Flow Grade. So we don't try to help people to upgrade themselves, but to flow grade them, to get more into that, what you just described, in that moment where you're completely present, you lose yourself, and you give yourself also to your environment. And I noticed that yesterday as well on stage, that after that I have this down, because this is the normal process that you get high, but whatever goes high has to come down at some point. And
it has to a little bit.
Right.
You're going, you have to, it's like a battery, you have to recharge. Today I went out and I felt a little down. I was tired. I did 2 seminars, 2 days in a row. Plus I demonstrated a few exercises to advertise my upcoming seminar this November back in Munich again. And I felt tired doing that. And then I realized, the batteries are down a little bit. I need to recharge. So, I'll do my breathing. I'll do my cold water therapy. I'll do my Qigong and joint mobility, but nothing really hard. Some days, literally, I'll lay up in my room like a little animal, and I'll just lay up. Pretty much just stay in all day. Don't go anywhere. Don't see anyone. Don't do anything. Wow. I mean, I'll take the morning walk, but I won't go out for the rest of the day. I'll literally stay in the hotel all day, in my room, reading, meditating, answering emails. Very low energy. It doesn't happen often, but usually after a big event like this.
It seems like you're very much in touch with yourself. Now, just came to mind, are you interested also in shamanism and in the more woo-woo stuff, let's say, that people might not associate now with science, but is there anything that you're excited about in that area?
Well, I mean, like we were talking about earlier, people that get really into science, it's pretty limited.
Right.
And I'm not a scientist, are you?
No.
So how do we know it's good science or bad science? It's hard, right, to read these studies? They make it purposely hard. And only other scientists can read it. But a lot of times these guys are bolstered by their buddies and their friends who back them. It's like a little good old boys club, So good science, bad. I find especially research done on exercise is really pretty bad, usually. There's just so many limitations to what they're doing. I like empirical evidence better, What's been working for people for thousands of years, what was working then, what's working still now. My own empirical experiments, you have to experiment with yourself. You got to figure out like what works for yourself. Like I said, I've been training for 53 years, so I have a pretty good handle on like what I need and what I don't. And of course, it changes, as a man starts to age. Also, my sources of information. I don't go to scientists per se, but I go to guys that have passed through to the other side. Am I going to listen to some 25-year-old guy about nutrition and about training? Heck no. What's that guy know? He knows nothing. And he's going to be, in 10 years, he's going to completely change his ideas too. Mm-hmm. Believe me, I did.
Right.
So, I look for guys that pass through the other side. Most of my mentors were like older guys in their 80s, 90s, 100. I look to guys that have made it. What were they doing? What did they espouse? How did they eat? How did they train? What are they saying? And then I look for the commonality. Maybe it'd be different systems, but there's always commonalities. And so I do my own little mental research on and stuff like that. And so basically, you can't really trust anybody much under 60.
By the way, then who is someone that you consider successful right now that you look up to?
Well, he's dead now, but Master Elliot Gracie, one of my martial arts, man, the guy was like 97. He was still getting on the mat and rolling around and training with people in his late 80s. Wow. And he was still spry right up till the end. I have very fond memories. I lived with him for a month one time at his farm in Terrazopolis. It's one of the great memories I have. All his brothers stay, they're about my age. I mean, all his sons, I'm sorry, about my age, but they've kept themselves in really, really good shape using the Gracie diet. It's a food combining diet. Jack LaLanne was a mentor. I followed Jack's career the whole way through, met him. He was in his mid-90s when he just went to sleep one night and just didn't wake up. His wife found him dead in the morning with a smile, but what a great way to go out. The guy never was sick, stayed healthy, just didn't wake up one morning. Nikolai Amosov from Russia was the guy that coined the term joint mobility. That's the first time I'd ever heard that term from Nikolai. He did the 1,000 moves to heaven routine, and he completely reversed the aging process when he was in his 50s. He had to have a stent put in his heart. He decided he needed to lose weight and get himself fit, and he created this whole system on this whole Russian health system. So I followed him quite closely, corresponded with him. He's dead now, his website's down now, but you can still read some of the things that have been translated into English. He wrote this one book on health that is only in Russian. I'd love to see a translation of that book. But Chandra Ramite is a yogi, he's in his 70s. He told me that the critical age for a man is between 60 and 65. Mm-hmm. If you can get through those 5 years, then it's pretty smooth sailing until the end. But this is where a lot of guys get really messed up, and they end up setting themselves up for an early death between 60 and 65. So, these are some of the guys that I've looked at. I worked with this Taoist yoga guy that showed me so many good things. He was like an old man. So,
wow.
My old wrestling coach from college, Dale Bonsall, he's a PhD in physical education, exercise science. He's in the Wrestling Coaches Hall of Fame. And Dale is in his late 70s, still skips rope for a half an hour every single day. Man, when I saw him, he's just like a kid. It just brought me back to university, like in the 1970s. It was like time had stood still for this guy. That's a guy that I'm going to listen to.
Wow.
Guys that have made it through to the other side. That's why I say it virtually cuts out almost everybody if you think about it. Some of these, all these young guys with their systems and their exercise and all this stuff. Okay, they may have some good ideas and so forth, but is it going to be sustainable? I pretty much can tell that much of the stuff, even here at Perform Better, no one's going to be doing it in 10, 20 years. And much of the stuff is going to damage them to the point where they're going to actually do more harm than good. You got to be very careful though. So,
wow. Steve,
that's why you got to listen to the old guys, man.
Yes, and I'm listening to you, and I could keep talking for hours, but I think you have an excellent appointment as well.
Okay,
and just asking a couple more questions.
Round two, man. Yeah, sure.
No, because I'm still interested in one thing. First of all, do you follow a specific diet?
I do. I follow a food combining diet based on the work of Dr. John Tilden. He was the turn of the century American physician who found that this whole concept of doing surgeries and giving drugs is the wrong way to go with treating illness. That all illness can be reversed and by the human body, by your own immune system. But people get in the way of their own immune system. And when I say get in the way, they overburden the digestion through overeating and eating too much or miscombining foods, which makes it really hard to digest and assimilate. And we're just basically digestive machines. And when you're not digesting and assimilating your foods properly, a whole cascade of health problems can arise, including inflammation. But what's the typical Western doctor do? Doctor, my shoulders are bothering, my fingers, my elbows sore. Oh, you got arthritis. You are suffering from inflammation. Let's give you this anti-inflammatory drug to get rid of the pain, right? Or, doctor, I'm having digestive problems. Oh, well, you're having gallbladder problems. Let's get in there and cut that gallbladder out. Why not get to the source of why these things are happening? And it usually always comes back to diet. So Tilden found that fasting, when sick, is the ideal way for your body to heal itself. So you're not burdened, because digestion takes a lot of energy. So when you are unburdened with digestion, your body can put all its energy into healing. So fasting is great for colds or any type of negative manifestation. And then I'll eat 2 to 3 meals a day. Usually a fruit-based meal. Then I'll have a protein-based meal. What's protein? Flesh, animal flesh. Mm-hmm. If you're a vegan or vegetarian, you can replace it with a vegetarian protein. I eat animal proteins. And I'll have that with a large raw vegetable salad, leaf green salad, sometimes a cooked vegetable, but no mixing starch and protein. If I'm lean and I like my weight, I'll eat a starch-based meal. What starch? It could be a grain, it could be a potato or a sweet potato or a squash or some starchy vegetable. If I feel like maybe I need to keep my weight down, I will forgo the starches and I'll have another fruit-based meal. So usually it's 2 to 3 meals a day. If I get up really early in the morning, I push the first meal back to usually around 9 or 10 o'clock. If I get up a little bit later, I'll push the first meal back to 11. And then I'll have my chief meal in the middle of the day. That's the protein-based meal. That's usually, for me, since I push my meals back, is usually around 2 o'clock. I'll have my chief meal. And then I'll lay down and listen to Kelly Howe, Theta Brainwave Meditation.
I'll check that out right away after.
She has a whole bunch of different tapes, by the way. She has gamma, wave, delta, And then I'll have a very light supper. I do not like to eat a heavy meal before bed. I think it interferes with my digestive process. So usually it will be a fruit-based meal, or sometimes melon. Like in the summer, I'll just eat watermelon, or cantaloupe, or maybe cherries, or whatever it is. I usually try to get it in season. It doesn't make sense for a Nordic man to be eating bananas and pineapple from Hawaii when there's plenty good berries and apples and cherries and the food that grows in his region. So I try to eat organically based, fresh produce is the base of the diet, with some starches, unless I feel like maybe I'm putting on some unwanted weight, then the starch goes away for a while. But if I'm high energy, some starch, and then a protein, good protein. I like animal proteins, chicken, beef, rabbit if I can get it, deer or venison if I can get it. I love lamb chops if I can get it. Just depends what's available. Occasionally fish. I'm not a big fish guy. I will eat some yogurt or casein proteins usually. I'm not afraid of gluten or wheat, but in sparing. I don't eat it every day. Right. But sure, I like those German crackers you guys make, Knackerbrot.
Knäckebrot.
Yeah, thank you for pronouncing that for me. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things. I'll have that with some avocado spread on it.
Oh,
maybe like a few leaves of lettuce, and quite a delicious little starchy meal.
And do you supplement anything, by the way?
No supplements. No, I think supplementation is dangerous. For every nutrient we know about, there's 100 nutrients we still don't know about. So you start to get these huge imbalances. And a lot of these vitamin companies just seem to randomly just throw this stuff together. It's like you're just creating a lot of imbalances. God made the perfect diet for all creatures on earth. You don't see lions supplementing their diet with branched chain amino acids and vitamin B. You don't see, like killer whales supplementing their diet with vitamins, or birds, or any animal, foxes, wolves, Now, the perfect diet is created for man. And we know that it's fresh, natural produce that you can find. That should be the base. If you're getting plenty of fruits and vegetables in your diet, you're not going to have any deficiencies. And then you have a goodly portion of protein, but you don't have to get crazy with the protein. Some guys just get protein crazy. That can cause some problems in itself. Anytime you start getting that imbalances, too much of one thing, too much of another, demonizing different food groups is never a good idea. Oh, the gluten is the scourge of mankind, or carbohydrates are going to make you fat. That's nonsense, man. It's not true. For every one of those little myths, I could show you 10 examples where it's just simply not true.
And I think oftentimes it's just the dose makes the poison. So.
The dose makes the poison. I mean, anything can be poisonous if taken to excess. Exactly. I mean, you basically could kill yourself on water. And there have been people that have made themselves sick or even died from drinking too much water.
Right.
Water. So, it's all proportion, And even deadly poisons can be very, very healthful in small amounts.
Yes.
We know apple seeds and certain seeds have cyanide, but a little cyanide is actually quite good for you. Mm-hmm. We know that alcohol is an absolutely deadly poison, but yet research shows that just a small amount of alcohol, a very small amount, can be quite a tonic, like an elixir.
So beneficial to increase bioavailability for certain extracts, and I know some Scandinavians, they take these medicinal mushrooms in an alcoholic solution because it's absorbed better by the body that way.
So we know that a little bit of poison can be tonic, but once you start getting excessive with anything, be it coffee, be it anything, and you can have anything once in a while.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with maybe having an ice cream once in a while, or a piece of cake or something. And if I would do something like this, then I won't eat for 5 hours, and then I'll have a large raw vegetable salad later, and everything balances out. So, there's nothing that, is forbidden in the kind of diet that I follow. It's just that you use common sense. You don't have steak and potato and bread and a salad, then a piece of pie or a cake. You're just overburdening the digestive system and mixing all this stuff and making it super hard to digest. Why not just have the steak and the salad,
right.
And then maybe 5 hours later you have your potato, and maybe if you really want it, have a piece of pie before you go to bed.
Wow.
Just break it up.
Steve, I think over the whole course now of this interview, we dug into kettlebell, meditation, gratitude, alternative medicine, oil pulling, so many different things, and people can take so much away from this. But what would be the one thing now, if they could only remember one thing from you, what would you like them to remember?
Be true to yourself. Be yourself. Don't try to be something that you're not. Don't be something that was projected on you by your parents or somebody. You got to find out who you really are, and then be true to that person, that inner nature. But first you got to find out who that person is. And that takes some work, that takes maybe some meditation and some time.
Excellent message, excellent message. Now, if people want to follow you and find out more about you, where can they find?
Well, the website is maxwellsc.com. The S is for strength, the C is for conditioning, strength and conditioning, maxwellsc.com. I have an events page where I'm going to be around the world. And of course, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under Steve Maxwell SC. And I post a lot of really cool pictures. You never know where I'm going to pop up. I'm just all over the place. Just before I came here, I was in Bodensee, Obersee, Lake Constance. I stayed at a little place called Lindau, that little island.
Yeah, it's nice.
Oh my God, I posted so many cool pictures. But I'm going to be in China. I'm going to be in Taiwan, in Taipei City. I'm going to be in Shanghai. I'm going to be in Australia, and I'm always posting really awesome photos of all these different places. I'm going to be staying 2 months on the island of Maui, one of my favorite places. So, you can follow this and
I'm sure a lot of people will. Thanks a lot. And I want to join you for your breathing.
You come as my personal guest.
Thank you very much.
If you want, we can even do part 2. Get a little bit more into this whole gratitude and the manifestation process and creative visualization so that you can manifest your dreams in this world.
Steve, I would love that. Really. Thank you so much for this. This is amazing. And thanks to Perform Better for making this happen.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it very much. The chance to get my message out.
All right. This is it for now. And next one's coming. Round 2 is in the works. So